Welcome to the Think Forward podcast, where we speak with futurists, innovators, and big thinkers. Come along with your host, Steve Fisher, and explore the future together.
Hello, friends, fellow futurists and big thinkers. In this episode, we're going to take a ride through the future of innovation, foresight, and a little bit of world domination. Now, your guest isn't your typical CEO. Oh no. This guy started out as a kid who thought coding in QBasic was the coolest thing ever. And he somehow turned that childhood curiosity into leading a global powerhouse in innovation management. We're going to dive deep into how our guest and his team are essentially building an innovation operating system. Yes, you heard that right. Designed to make sure companies don't just keep up with change, but stay ahead of it. And trust me, if you think innovation is all about boring meetings and endless PowerPoint slides, our guest is here to prove you wrong. We'll be talking about everything from the challenges of getting large corporations to actually do something innovative to the mind-boggling speed at which generative AI is reshaping how we come up with ideas. And of course, it wouldn't be a Think Forward show without a bit of whimsy. So, expect a few bold predictions, some wild analogies, think medieval bloodletting meets modern innovation, and a lot of laughs as we explore what the future holds. By the end of this episode, you'll know not only why we are experiencing a seismic shift in the innovation function, but also why our guest is one of the most forward-thinking leaders in the space. Welcome to episode 109, The Future of Innovation with Christian Mulroth. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure meeting you in person a couple of weeks ago, and it's continuing to be a pleasure to meet you also virtually. So thanks.
You and I met when I was at McKinsey, and you interviewed me for your podcast, which I thought was a great job. And if people should check that out, I'll put it in the show notes if you want to check that episode out. See Christian on the other side of the podcast. So you are the CEO of Itonics. I know there's more to you than that, but I'd love to hear your story. I always like to start your background, what led you to become CEO of Itonics to create this amazing company. What's your journey?
Yeah, Steve, I think I was more interested in computers already when I was a kid or a teenage kid and how the technology worked than in the stuff that was taught at school. So I'm not saying school is not important. So if there's young people listening, go to school. It's great. But I don't know. I just thought it's cool. You can give a machine a command, and then it actually performs the task. So back in my days, it was QBasic. I don't know if anybody remembers that. So I just thought that this was fascinating. And you give a prompt to something and a line of code, and there's actually a machine performing a task, which is completely different to human. And then from there, everything just unfolded. Of course, I did studies. So I studied business administration, computer science. I did my PhD in statistics and also in AI. And as for Itonics, I really just started when there were just a few individuals at the company back then, including the founder, Mike Durst, and a few others. And then over the years, I guess it's just maybe the no-nonsense approach that both our customers and also my colleagues liked. So today we're 150 people with offices around the world. It's including Miami, Paris, Berlin, Cape Town, Kathmandu, and also others. And that's where we are.
And now in Miami, just about to open up your U.S. office.
Yes. It's going to be interesting.
So this journey, what was the inspiration? What drew you to innovation management? This is a particular field. Maybe you should explain before we get to that is, what does Itonics do? What does it do for companies? What does it offer?
Oh, sure. We empower innovation-led growth and business transformation. So that means we support organizations to innovate in an effective way. So in order to achieve long-term growth, long-term success, whatever the goal is, through innovation. That's the thing. So we have built, and we're still building, the innovation operating system, the innovation OS, which is really just the software as a service for everything innovation to do exactly that. Drive sustainable growth, accelerate business transformation. So you can use it to stay ahead of change, create trend radars, tech radars, do foresight work and futures work, capture ideas, derive innovation opportunities, build roadmaps, and track the progress. So instead of doing these different tasks in a myriad of tools, some collaboration tool here, some maybe customer insights tool there, some trend analytics tool there, some road mapping tool there, and some ideation tool there. We bring this all together in one platform because we found it's much more easier for people to collaborate and actually drive change than use 6 or 7 software tools a day and basically spend your time with managing those tools, managing data transport rather than actually doing the job. So that's why we said one thing, super clean, super easy to use to actually support humans rather than taking away their time all the time.
So when you came across this, did you work in innovation before you joined Itonics? Did you do any of this kind of innovation work, futures work, like before you came?
Yeah, and you also asked me, and that's connected, is how I got involved in all this innovation management space, the bubble, basically. To be honest, there was not a big purpose or a big dream or that I wanted to make true. It's much more simple. I've seen big corporates from the inside, and I noticed how they struggle with change. And of course, there are so many problems of all kinds out there that need to be solved, so many opportunities. So I thought that's interesting, because from a very simple and naive point of view, there's so many people working there. So why is everything going so slow? When it turns out more people obviously doesn't mean more progress. The bigger the better? Probably no. But it also turns also out that the bigger, actually, you need more alignment, you need more processes, you need more bureaucracy, you need more meetings. And getting things done gets sometimes displaced a little bit. So to some degree, of course, in favor of getting aligned about stuff and then maybe politics. So I thought that's interesting, that there has to be a better way. And then the conversations I had and the steps I took just led me there, basically. And that's when I got involved.
So when you mentioned some of these common challenges that organizations are facing, like how does Itonics address them? Like how do this goes to like simplifying, because it's a broad field, like the simplification process for people. If we can unpack that a bit, that would be great.
Yeah, Steve, 100%. And thanks for asking about simplifying it, because I really think that's what we need, actually. So 100%, I agree. Let's take a few of them. Let's take ambition, for example, innovation ambition. We believe that innovation is not just solving customer problems and crowdsourcing ideas. Who asked for ChatGPT? I don't know if there was actually a team that says, the customer problem is that, I don't know, he or she or it needs a chat interface to actually solve problems and talk to a very large language model to do anything. Yeah, that's if you would tell this to a corporate innovation unit, they probably go, what's the customer? And it's also, I don't think it's about crowdsourcing. Many times it's not about crowdsourcing new ideas. It's actually maybe few people, smart people with ambition, put them in the room and think about doing great stuff, solving a problem, maybe, but also maybe just developing a very cool technology with a big ambition. One of the common challenges is ambition in the organizations, because making things better is great and incremental improvement is needed. I'm not saying skip that part, but to make leaps, forward, to really solve some challenges, you need some sort of ambition. And not every big enterprise and corporate is made to encourage ambition. That's a thing, corporate innovation.
Great. So
it's just one.
Sorry, did you want to say anything else? Okay.
We can probably make an entire podcast series.
We could probably super long form. I think what's also been a game changer, kind of playing on extending that. Technology is evolving in the innovation space. We've seen a lot of the tools over the years, a lot of them focused on really the idea collection and voting the movement through, very little on portfolio, very little on trends mapping, the futures work, which we'll touch on in a sec. But the game changer on everybody's tongue is Gen AI, right? You've done some studies. I saw this at your talk, is fascinating. And I don't know if you're going to do a paper on it, but I think it's very compelling. And I've seen this in design workshops and ideation is Gen AI, I view, and I want to ask, I'm prefacing this, is that I used to be very anti-AI about it, especially from an artist perspective. But I've seen it to be a collaborative partner. And I think if you use it, it can wield better results than just humans themselves. They can be that partner. So what do you see? Tell me about the studies and what you've learned from using Gen AI in the innovation process.
Yeah, it is Frankly speaking, it is unbelievable how far we already are. It's, what is it, mid of 2024? So for anybody listening to this in the years to come, we have mid 20. And it's unbelievable how fast we made progress. Sometimes we tend to forget that. So when I was doing my PhD studies already quite a few years ago, we had access to the very first quote unquote large language models. And we had public funding, research funding from the German government, so I was able to play around with them, actually acquire some of them, and understand, or try to understand at least, potential of them. Now, fast forward, and you already mentioned it, Steve, and I couldn't have said it better. I think the most revolutionary thing about AI right now is that an algorithm is actually better at coming up with ideas than I am. And as we see in the research, and yes, we're going to publish a scientific paper soon, it's actually not even better than I am, but even better than a collective of 10, 15,000 people in the corporates. That's interesting. And I think in a few years from now, actually, we will look back to today and at the way companies innovate and think it was medieval, very medieval.
So it's basically, so if I could do a funny analogy, innovation is right now is like putting doing leeches and bloodletting to solve the problem. Look, we haven't discovered antiseptic or bacteria. Yes. That's it's very funny because this is being recorded in August of 2024. So whoever's listening to it in a month from now or a year or a couple of years, we'll see how well it ages, but it'll be interesting to look retrospectively. Because the rate of change as futurists, we look at that rate of change, right? Like every industry is different, everything. You have to get it in perspective that one industry or sector's 3 years is somebody else's 10 or 20, right? And it's right. Even it's accelerating.
I don't know if it's going to be large language models actually solving that. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, nobody knows. But there is inherent issues with them. Yes. And sure, right now, again, in August 2024, yes, we're discussing hallucination, all that stuff. Maybe that's going to be solved. Maybe not. We don't know if it's going to be Gen AI or large language models. Let's see. But the sheer capability that we see today in even connecting the dots is in all the innovation work. That is understanding trends much more faster, uncovering emerging technologies much, much earlier than competition, for example, is already providing companies a head start against the companies that don't use that sort of technology because they're still trying to figure out what to do with it. So yes, in ideation, it's interesting. Maybe there is a limit to that. Maybe not. We don't know. But yeah, as you say, there's going to be a scientific paper. We had a corporate challenge with a large enterprise competing against an AI without the experts that actually rated and voted the ideas, knowing if the idea came from an AI, yes or no. And we solved for writing style and put a lot of randomness in the ideas and even typos, right? So that they can't really distinguish, is it from an AI, is it from humans? So there was a little bit of prep work for sure. But it turned out that 2 of the 3 winning ideas where the seasoned experts actually put money on the table for a POC haven't been developed by a human. We just uncovered that after they placed their bets, like real money, real US dollars on those projects. And again, that's 2024. So no matter the technology and if it's LLMs, if it's Gen AI, whatever, but something is changing and it's changing at a super fast rate, as you say.
It's an interesting perspective. I will offer that when it comes to the Gen AI space, I think I look at the landscape of the personal computing industry that changes over 30, 40 years, going from floppy drives to hard drives to solid state, like just storage, or look at the progressions or the combinations of applications we use now versus the singular apps. I think it's the same kind of thing, is that it's going to be about the interface. Like the transformers or the generative part will be in the background. Generative LLMs are great, but I can't do current weak signals research with that because it's from 2023. It doesn't help me at all. I won't mention names of tools because I'll probably be dated or by the time it gets out already, but there are ones that are connected, and I think there are others that are starting to connect, and eventually more tools will come together, and then the solution provider whatever you're trying to do, it will switch that in the background. You just have to know how to ask it's all about asking the right questions. Where do you think it's been the ideation part? Where do you think the biggest shift has been in the innovation process? Where is it becoming very powerful right now? And we can talk about where you think it's going to go, but where do you think it's having the most impact right now on innovation?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Yeah, because we just discussed this with a few of our clients. With a few of our trusted clients, we have AI Council, big corporates around the globe from various industries, including banking, finance, professional services, automotive OEMs, suppliers, tier 1, tier 2, and just to understand and to have a group of like-minded people trying to understand, okay, what's the potential here? And the interesting perspective that I learned during that workshop, it wasn't on my perspective, but that came up during the workshop, is actually you can use it in many different ways. You could, for example, use it, of course, as we mentioned, to uncover weak signals, trends, technologies for sure. What you're doing is you're addressing a very small target group if you compare this to empowering everybody with innovation, with AI tools for innovation, for example. So everybody would mean maybe it's the 15 to 20,000 people in a large bank that has some sort of ambition to try to make things better, and provide them with the tool, have much more leverage on 10, 15, 20,000 people than, for example, on the strategy people, just as an example, which is maybe a team of 30, 40, sometimes even smaller, sometimes bigger, depending on the organization. So I thought that's interesting. Right now, we're, for example, heavily researching into any sorts of data analytics, machine learning, and then also AI, including a generative aspect like writing text or whatever, for innovation work, for ideation, for even coming up with project proposals in any sort of ambition. So that's one thing. But I think it's really the connection of having, as you said before, actually having an assistant that helps you, I don't know, come up with a technology radar in 5 minutes. Emerging technologies in my space. It's super, you can do it because it has access to a vast data lake that needs to be curated, of course. You can't do this with current LLMs. You need to give it access to a lot of data, scientific publications, patents, news, press releases, product pages, and the likes to understand, okay, and then it needs to go through actually a structured process of understanding, okay, what is an emerging technology? How do I cluster the data? And then how do I write about it with Gen AI? For sure, that's part of it. But it's an entire processing pipeline, an entire chain of different data analytics, even just plain statistics sometimes, but then also machine learning and Gen AI to actually say, okay, now we have a capability to build a technology radar in a couple of minutes. And then from that technology radar, say, okay, and how do we address some of the emerging technologies that seem to be interesting in our portfolio today? So match it with information you also have it in the innovation operating system. Say, that's interesting. And from that, uncover some opportunities. Say, oh, there is nothing in the Horizon 2 pipeline that we have that addresses this kind of technology, which should be maybe core to our business. So let's start ideating. And so it's all connected with each other. And that's what we do, at least. We try to build the system, the entire system where all the data is connected so that it's much more than just tapping into a conversational interface and say, oh, give me 5 ideas for improving something, whatever. But it actually can tap into this intelligence and perform a task. It's not autonomously, but perform a task with much more intelligence and data and information and knowledge in memory than a single human or maybe even a group of humans could do in a workshop, for example. So that gives you much more precise and much more evidence-backed suggestions on how to fill a gap in your innovation portfolio or try to come up with a very ambitious, potentially disrupting product against your competitor. So it's the connection of the things where things get interesting over the years. And that's probably going to be different than, hey, let's get into a workshop room and ideate what we could do to, I don't know, win 5% more market share in India, whatever.
So now where we are with Gen AI is a lot of LLMs. There's RAGs. And for those who don't know the term RAG, it's basically, think of it as public LLM data with your own private stuff, like a hybrid, if you will, but inside the system. I do think 2025, 2026, I think we're going to see the dawn of the agents as well. I think that's the key, is your point, is pulling the right pieces. If it's live internet, and you get to tell it what to do, and it's going to decide for you to find things and, create these connections that you wouldn't think of and bring this to the surface. I think that's building those innovation agents in your system. I'm sure you're already probably on that already, but I think that's a big shift, and those kind of technologies excite me. Is there anything else that excites you that's potentially going to be out there to revolutionize things further? Is there anything that's exciting you out there?
I think at least for me, that's already enough these days. Because just the mere thought of, and even with the existing LLMs, for example, provided by OpenAI, which I think are beyond brilliant already, they would probably say different, but I think it's a great leap. Already today, these models can provide better and sometimes even more creative ideas. But I think we took an interesting turn in all this Gen AI thing, because everybody said, oh, it's so great, let's build robots and AI to do the chores, operate the washing machine, and help me free time for creative tasks. And fast forward, it's 2024, and this thing is doing our creative work, and we're left to do the chores at home. That's interesting. So, yeah, I think that's already enough to take it in for many, at least for me.
So, let's talk about ethics before we jump into the next bigger area. The ethics of using this, like, what role does ethics play in this, and how should, companies like yourself, how should they address it? How should the company doing the innovation, do they reveal that a Gen AI told them to? I took orders. I was only following orders. Yeah, could you talk about ethics in this? Because it's not like we're cheating on a final, but with Claude or OpenAI, ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So important for sure. For example, ensure that the new developments that might come out of this have a positive impact, avoid unintended harm for sure. That's one thing. But there's also really practical and tangible stuff like, okay, if you as a solution provider, whoever you are, get to know a lot of the very confidential and sometimes even secret data of corporations, how do you ensure that your customers, your clients can actually trust you? Because there is companies out there, I don't say any names, but that of course use the data to train their own models and maybe do stuff with that. Sometimes you can turn it off, sometimes you can't. But even in these corporate ethics and how do you work and keep up the trust with your customers or with your peers is already a big area in itself, because you shouldn't do that. And once you lose trust in any of these endeavors, it's super, super hard to gain it back. So that's on the one side. And yeah, as I say, like cheating on a test, that's really interesting. I think it's happening in universities for sure. In business, I don't know if this is an ethics question, but we've seen, of course, effect on psychology for sure, like the not invented here syndrome, for example. People starting to feel, as you say, they just follow some orders by this overlord machine. Of course, we're not there yet. It can be terrifying to some. If you sit in front of the screen, you think you have a good idea, and basically you say, "Okay, give me 5 others," and they say, "Oh, this is actually better. That's even better than my sheet." Yeah. So you're like, okay, you're realizing, maybe I don't know, maybe I should deal with it. And then, of course, yeah. For example, we have a customer in the foods and drinks industry, and again, there's really practical considerations. For now, their corporate policy is they are not allowed to use basically any LLM out there, because all these LLM providers can't ensure that there is no training data in it that was created by humans younger than 18 years. So the problem specifically in the alcohol business. Yeah. So they're not allowed right now to use these models because, maybe there might be an interesting targeting strategy somewhere for underage people, which is clearly forbidden, for example, in the alcohol and beverages industry. So even those practical things, so they're building their own LLM right now and trying to ensure there is only specific data in there. Even that, to ensure no harm by possibly marketing alcohol to teenage people, which they shouldn't do that effectively, at least. So it's a very big thing, and I guess we learn as we go on ethics in innovation and in AI.
Yeah, there's also in the legal industry using to do summarization or other types of aspects of the legal field you need for discovery work. There's admissibility. It might be great to summarize it, but can you actually use that in a accepted by the court, right? There are certain ones. So you're right. There are there's a lot of regulatory issues that will need to be addressed if it is to move to, I think, a comfortable level for people that are not in the early adopter type of risk, acceptable risk. There's going to be the risk averse is not there yet. Let's change gears and let's talk about leadership. Let's talk about entrepreneurship and just being a leader in a space like this. So how do you balance the visionary thinking? I think of you as very visionary in the way things coming. You put your futurist hat on for your product, but also for the space, but also being practical in the application. And so it's how do you balance those two aspects of your work?
Yeah, it's a good question. Having a vision is great, yeah, but if you don't do anything, you'll never make it work. And I think there is many visionaries out there. I don't think you read from all the business books, oh, this guy has been a great visionary. This girl has been fantastic in this one. Yeah, I think people have lots of visions, no matter if they're big or small, if they're in private or professional life, that's fine. So having a vision is great. Being able to communicate it is even better. But if you don't do anything, you'll actually never make it work. For me, a vision is clear, it's set, turning it into action is crucial. And sure, it helps from time to time if you talk about it and try to get people of all sorts just tune in. But ultimately, what you need is a strong bias for action. So it goes hand in hand. It's the same because you asked for balancing, for example, between visionary thinking and practical application. I also think there is no such thing as work-life balance, for example. I don't think it exists. I don't know. The concept of work-life balance is, I guess, misleading. Because it suggests, similar to balancing visionary thinking with practical application, it suggests that you need to find a perfect balance between two things, like an equilibrium. But I think you need more some sort of integration, not balance. Yeah, okay. Because, for example, for work-life balance, I don't care where I work, and I don't look forward to the weekends. I also don't get the Happy Friday thing, because why is Friday happy in the first place? Why not Monday? Why not Wednesday? Why not Sunday? Because you leave early and can't wait for the weekend, then you're probably on the wrong job. Then you probably just should think about, I don't know, investing your time into something that doesn't make you think about work-life balance all the time. So that's a balancing thing. I know where this comes from, but I think it's really just integration. Same for strategic thinking and putting things into action. You need both, but you need to integrate it seamlessly and have a clear bias for action.
Okay. It's a good perspective. Everyone's got very different feelings on those things. And you talk to a lot of leaders in the innovation space, and I think bridging that, but it's really about the culture of innovation, right? When you've seen so many different companies that use your platform, you've talked just even conversations with them as they might be exploring using your platform. And there's got to be some leadership qualities that are consistent, like in terms of, so what do you think is essential for creating that culture? Is coming from the leader, coming from the company, what do you find is a good aspect, the healthy aspects? What do you find is a consistent thing of successful innovation cultures? Yeah,
so we've seen so many amazing people, specifically in the innovation space. And I'll include everything into that. Innovation is a big word for stuff that you can break down. That includes, of course, researchers, development people, engineers, corporate innovation people for sure, great marketing people, great product people. We've seen amazing people really driving things forward. And I can offer some observations on what we've seen, what makes them amazing. Most of them had a very big capacity. They're very able to adapt fast, both personally and professionally. It doesn't really matter. They're very resilient, and they're basically anytime they're on the offensive, right? So they have this capacity to say, okay, change is inevitable, and uncertainty is actually their friend. And it's an ally. Because they say, okay, cool, things are changing, jobs are changing, whatever. So there is opportunity in that. So they're fast and they're able to adapt. They're aggressive in that sense, but not in a bad way, not in a I'll beat you up aggressive way, but really just in they're pushing all the time. They focus so much on results, not on the process, and they have a good sense of when things are irrelevant to what they want to achieve. So they skip it. So this is describing all that, but at the same time, and and maybe that's a second part of it, they're also the very honest people. They have a high sense of integrity, and they live some sort of candid feedback culture, but with positive intent. They're into the game. Yeah? They're not on the sidelines. They're not coaching all the time. So that they're really in the game. And you can rely. There's some sort of camaraderie. They keep their word. They're clear, straightforward. They simplify. And that's a great combination and a great match between. They know things are changing. They're able to adapt faster on the offensive. And at the same time, they're super reliable. They're hungry. And they try to simplify things also for others and for themselves to get to the core of what really needs to be done.
Are they evangelizing this in the organization? Are they evangelizing this?
In a different way than the innovation community sometimes thinks. They're evangelizing by taking action and providing results. They're not even, sometimes they're not even saying we're innovating. That's the thing. Like they do the job. They're very clear on what they have to. They come up with these fantastic things, and then they deliver. And if it's a for-profit, for example, then they make a big business out of it. Or if it's a non-profit, which we've seen as well, then they really do good and bring more health or even, food, water, whatever it is to different regions of the world. But they don't go up on stage and say, I am an innovation person. That's so interesting that they do it. And by that, others follow. Because they say, oh, she is doing such a great job. She is leading the way. She's bringing something new to the world. And that is bringing people behind an innovation culture. But they don't call it innovation culture. They don't call it sometimes even innovation per se. They just do the stuff. And if you need a word to describe it, then you can use innovation. But that's how they evangelize in the organizations many times, by leading the way, leading from the front and showing the results actually.
So I'll switch it to you then. How do you create the culture and keep everyone motivated to innovate in Itonics?
Yeah. We try to follow the exact same thing. We literally just try to do great stuff, ship as fast as we can, basically ship all the time, getting great feedback from that, from the customers, from the partners, from others. And I think if you work on cool stuff with the most successful and admired brands around the world, with being able to have great conversations as we do, Steve, today, that's great. And if you don't like that, we're just probably not the right group of people for someone. So, of course, it's an ongoing task to keep up a culture of getting things done, really finish things from start to end, for sure. But that already defines the culture. Shipping great stuff, getting great feedback, and that is positive reinforcement of a culture, which is basically nothing more than just a group of people agreeing on how to do things here.
So I'd love for you to share the vision for the future of Itonics. Like, where do you see the company 3 to 5 years from now? What are some exciting things you're working on that you could share? Because it gets people into your head, like where you being that, putting the futures hat on, the visionary hat on. Where do you want to go with this?
So if we flip this around, maybe start by that, I'd say probably the nightmare is becoming a corporate. Becoming a corporate with lots.
Okay, we're going to go dystopian. That's fine. We can go dystopian. That's fine. That's a possible future. Let's be futurists. It's a possible future. Okay.
Yeah. Share what we don't want and then what we want. So that's probably be a nightmare, becoming corporate with lots of bureaucracy. We want the opposite of that. What's the opposite of that? Of course, being a global company, we're working on that actively with the offices we have. And of course, continue to serve the most admired brands worldwide and everywhere. Really, where this is going to land ultimately is that we are the go-to platform for everything innovation and with everything. And to get there, we're really putting every dollar that we earn into R&D, into product development, into expansion, because that's the game. If you stop staying hungry, if you say, I'm good, then that's fine. But then the game is over. And I see it from little kids, for example, what they do is, right, they build something, they take Lego bricks or whatever, they build it. They have so much fun building it and doing all this stuff. And the moment they're done, they're going to destroy it. Because for them, there is literally it doesn't make any sense for them to, what should they do with it? Maintain it? Clean it? No, the fun was in building that stuff, in making this up, and in break after break, and building up a great castle or whatever this is, or even on the beach in the sand. The moment you basically stop there and say, okay, it's built, it's done, you're like, so what's next? So it's the continuing aspiration of building stuff and really becoming the go-to platform for everything innovation. And then, of course, do this in a completely different way, which means, again, the way how we do it is mediocre. It's basically 30-ish. Yeah. And going that way and showing people in the companies that there is a better way to innovate, and which basically means build great stuff, build great products, solve problems, help people, whatever it is. That's what we continue to do with the company.
That's great. So as we start to wrap the podcast up, I'd like to do these like rapid fire things. And so could you talk about a bold prediction for the future that you think people should prepare for? Okay,
so not saying this is a 100% probability for sure.
No, instead of prediction, let's say a possible future. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, let's take a possible future, because I think it's interesting. So because we all thought AI and robotics is going to kill the dull jobs, the boring ones. Mm-hmm. But now we see early use and high utility, for example, in marketing jobs and creative jobs, which I do have a musician background, and I'm not sure if I like it or not. I also see the guitar behind you, so I know you're too. So I don't know if it's good or not, yeah. But I think there's a possible future where actually we are taking away a lot of the creative stuff that we wanted to do, and probably this is going to leave us with the more dull jobs. Which, should we really go into that direction? I don't know. Because it's a different animal if you have a robot in your household doing the chores and doing the dishes, because it's a big machine. It's super invasive to your personal space, to your home, like having a robot running around, versus sitting in front of a computer and let Adobe create the next marketing campaign design for you. Completely different thing. But that's creative work, and the other stuff is probably the boring work. So I think it's interesting. So there is a probability that we're actually confronted with more of these dull jobs. And I also think human connection, compassion, and a specific flavor of creativity will get much more emphasis in the future than it has right now, because we want to counteract it. So I think these quote unquote old values and habits will become much more important. Family, compassion, community, as we see AI progresses over the next decade.
So this is a nice way to segue from a loss of everything to the restarting civilization question. So it's the two books, two music, two things you would bring to, how would you restart if we lost it all? Always a good question.
That is a banger of a question. Okay, so it's probably from a music perspective, I'll take, I don't know if that's crazy, I'll take Ludwig van Beethoven Symphony Number 9. Yeah, or maybe Bach, along those lines. Because if you really listen to it, if you're a music person or not, it doesn't really matter. But if you really listen to it, there is so much human ingenuity and creativity in that. If you compare this to, I don't know, Spotify's top 100 hot of the week playlist today, you get the difference, yeah? So, yeah, that's for music. That's for music, sure.
Books.
Two things. Two books. So there's one book I recently read. I don't remember the title, but it says you never should have lunch alone.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And
Keith Ferrazzi. Is that Keith Ferrazzi?
I don't remember. Yeah. Could be. I honestly would have to look it up. And then a second book would probably be some sort of encyclopedia. Some sort of encyclopedia where we can easily align on words and definitions, so that we talk about the same thing when we try to rebuild society and revamp it, and not get lost in figuring out the meaning of words across people, groups, civilizations, whatever would be there. Yeah. Some sort of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. You can skip the two things if you're not feeling it. So let's talk about the career part of this. Like one thing have you learned in your career you wish you could have told your, younger self when you started out? Like what would you tell them?
So I think sometimes I lack a little bit of patience. So I would have told myself some things take time.
Yeah. So what continues to inspire you? As we day in, day out, pushing forward, what inspires you to push your boundaries like in this?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the conversations I have all the time. The conversations, as mentioned before, the conversations we have, the conversations with people, that's it, 100%.
That's great. So as we close, I'm very much a big legacy person. I think as you reflect back on your life, how would you want your work to be remembered? What impact do you hope to have on the world when people look back and you look back on your legacy?
Yeah, and it's actually quite straightforward. Obviously, there is a personal side to this, which I will keep personal to family members. But professionally, it is really that simple. If you think back from the goal, which is basically why do you have innovation in the first place, which is just to improve, and if you take the ethics side from it, it's in inspiring others to improve. And the entire innovation thing goes so much deeper than just building great products, because great products, at least until today, are built by humans. And in order to get there, oftentimes it requires some change in behavior, some change in learning, some change in mind state, whatever this is. And the more, I think you can have great impact if you can help people on that journey, right? To change how they think, get rid of old and maybe bad habits, bad mindsets, bad whatever, and try to just become better over time. And the more people you can reach with that, and the more people that actually get better through working with you, that's great impact. It's as simple as it can get.
That's great. I just wanted to say thank you for being on Think Forward and just sharing your journey and what amazing stuff you're doing, and just being a leader in this space and showing people that, what can be done with tools like this and how they can really transform their businesses. Just thank you. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, Steve, for your time. I really appreciate it.
And before we go, you should tell people where they can find you and what other information. Yes. Where can they find you on the internet? All the vital information, which we'll also put in the show notes.
You can use LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to reach me. And from there, everything else is linked on LinkedIn.
Oh, great. Thanks again for being on the show, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Talk soon.
Thanks for listening to the Think Forward podcast. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms and at www.thinkforwardshow.com, as well as on YouTube under Think Forward Show. See you next time.